Lovely to be here. I just came out of Auckland yesterday and was presenting at the roading conference. They call it roading conferences in New Zealand. And they're going through the same transformation that we are going through here in Australia. This confluence of transport, technology and energy is driving enormous change across transportation sector, road, rail, ports and airports. We've been tracking this change for 7 years now. And 5 years ago, we made a conscious decision as an organisation with our board. And our board is made up of these people. So we are an entity that is a company limited by guarantee, but owned by the State Transport Agencies of Australia, the Commonwealth of Australia, and the New Zealand Central Government. So I have all the responsibilities as the Chief Executive to run a company, turn in a profit, receive no grant funding from government, so that's one hand tied behind my back, and we get no necessary guaranteed support from government in any way, shape or form. So it's a private company for all intents and purposes, but I report to a public sector board. So it's a really interesting environment to run a research organisation where I've got 35% of my staff with PhDs. We operate Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth and now Wellington offices, 240 people across the country. World-leading research facilities in Melbourne, material science. We run a fleet of 35 vehicles across the country, picking up the condition of the road network, all as an enterprise delivering for Australia and New Zealand. It's a wonderful challenge to have. So last year we launched NTRO as a brand, and NTRO builds on the 63 years of history of the Australian Road Research Board. We brought in the Australasian Centre for Rail Innovation, and we created NTRO, Road, Rail, Ports, Airports, delivering this fundamentally different view about the transport sector as we move into this fundamentally different way that the community expects transport to respond to future problems. We are one of 7 global research enterprises in the same space. Our partners are TRL in the United Kingdom, BTI in Sweden, BAST in Germany, IFSTAR in France, Research Institute of Highways in China, and we had their executive team out in March this year, and the Transport Research Board of the United States. They're the G7 of transport research laboratories globally. And here in Australia, NTRO is part of that network. So we bring all of the skills, we share skill sets, we share understandings and learnings globally. I've just been back from Europe a couple of weeks ago and been into Sweden, France, Germany, Czechoslovakia and the UK, talking to the trucking industry, talking to the sector about how they're going to decarbonise their sector and are they on a pathway to achieve those decarbonised goals that the political leaders in those countries have set for them. And the simple answer is no, they're not. And there will be a come to Jesus moment, if you like, in 2030, 2035 when those goals are not met. So we have to take a practical course here in this country. We have to understand what problem we're trying to solve, and we have to use data and technology as the drivers for practical solutions in our space. We operate as a business across these business groups. So we don't operate in silos of road, rail, ports and airports. We operate across asset performance, safer, smarter infrastructure, structures and certification, transport decarbonisation is a group we have within the business. Data and technology, a group we formed 5 years ago to bring the petabytes of data that we've got on the performance of the Australian road system to life and provide insight to our transport agencies about right treatment, right time, right place to improve the condition of the network. And sustainability and material performance has always been a big part of our future. So how are we delivering these new data sets? How are we informing government about the changes that are required to their thinking and how they maintain a transport network to enable our freight task and our community tasks to be performed? We've got 30 odd of these vehicles all sorts of forms crisscrossing Australia and New Zealand all times. The hero of the fleet is the Intelligent Pavement Assessment Vehicle, the IO, as you can see on the screen. Just a magnificent vehicle created out of Denmark, the fundamental principles about 10 years ago. We've got, by the end of this year, we'll have 4 of these operating in Australia. We're the only enterprise globally, we're the only country, Australia and New Zealand countries globally, that use these vehicles to assess pavement performance and use that assessment to go into asset management plans for agencies. So the iPave, the third generation of the iPave, understands the deflection or the strength in the inner wheel path, the strength in the outer wheel path at 80 kilometres an hour, does rutting, cracking, transverse profile, longitudinal profile, and 360-degree cameras all on the run. No traffic control required. So what does that mean from a data point of view? Well, what it means is I can tell the industry, if you're a Nolan's Transport and you want to run from Toowoomba to Melbourne and you've got a load of stone fruit on board, if you ask me what's the smoothest route to get there, I can tell you what the smoothest route is. If you're lumping a lump of steel from Melbourne to the Darling Downs blade of a wind turbine, you just want to get there quickly, I can tell you what the quickest route is. If you're an industry group that actually wants to deliver a project and wants to use the safest roads, I can also tell you what the safest roads are. So we can assist industry on this journey. We used the vehicles most recently in the flood recovery task for Victoria. And as Queenslanders, you'll know, we experienced this in 2010, 2011. Surprisingly enough, or maybe not for this audience, those lessons learnt from 2010, 2011 in Queensland were not transferred to Victoria. And I'll show you what happened. We all know we've had La Nina over the last 3 years. And in October 2022, we had a massive 1 in 130, 1 in 150 year flood event in Victoria. 80,400 kilometres of the network were affected. Fortunately, we had been using iPave in Victoria for the last few years. So they asked us to come in and assess what the condition of the network was. When can they open it again for the break tasks? When can we reconnect our communities? So we brought the iPave down, the latest generation, down from Queensland. Fortunately that year, there was no cyclone, no flooding, so we could move the truck down to, the most advanced truck down from Queensland down to Victoria. And this is what we found. Really interesting. So on the first of those bar charts, you'll see the condition of the network in 2021. So in 2021, the network had 16% really poor, 16% in a poor condition, 66 was average, barely any green, barely any really good condition in the network. The Victorian government had planned and had delivered $500 million of improvement in the network. When we went back, 22, you can see the green bit at the bottom. Massive investment, really significant improvement in the network. And when we presented this to the Chief Executive, Paul Younis, after we'd completed the work, we went, yeah, that's right, I can see my investment. I can see dollars invested, improvement in condition of the network. What happened after the flood? Not that the 42% of the network was in really poor condition. I mean, you just have to be an ordinary driver to see that. There's potholes everywhere, the network's a disaster. But he first zoomed in on, where's my green bit? I've invested $500 million to improve the condition of the network. No, it's left. How could that be? How can we be delivering more resilient networks using new construction standards like we do in Queensland after the 2010-2011 flood, where we use foam bitumen, bitumen-treated bases, cement-treated bases, we have better resilience in our rural and regional network in Queensland as a consequence of the work that the Australian Road Research Board did at the time. Didn't translate across the border. Public money, gone. So the Victorian Department of Transport and Planning has an enormous hole to dig themselves out of now. But they wouldn't have known any of that unless we had been measuring the network. With 8,400 kilometres flood affected, they didn't know where to start. So with the iPave, we were able to tell them there's 707 kilometres that you need to replace. Remove and replace. Zero strength less, no remaining life, $290 million fix. They were looking at $3 billion to fix the network. So it's data, it's the data-driven solutions. We're also using iPaves on airports for the first time anywhere in the world. So most of our airports in Australia, 270 odd airports, are granular pavements with chip seals. It keeps the country moving, keeps the flying doctor coming in and out, people coming in and out, and small freight tasks coming in and out. The quality and condition of the network we can now measure, and we can measure at 80 kilometres an hour. We can do an airport in 20 minutes. If you were to use traditional techniques, falling weight deflectometers and other things, it would take 3 or 4 days. You'd have to have notices to airmen, you'd have to close the runways down. We can do this at 2 o'clock in the morning and be finished, 20 minutes. Provide the results to the airport agency, do the PCN numbers, work out which planes can land and when, and move on. But that's not the end of the journey of data. We've moved really heavily into the digital space. We must know what the digital overlay of our systems are. So we created this vehicle called the iScan. So it does the proper digital mapping of the network. And anybody who's on LinkedIn would see this every day. Everybody says, well, of course you can do that. I can do it. Here's my LinkedIn thing. I've got this little cool device. 5 million data points a second. We can have a level of resolution that can pick up the same as what an iPad does in a very heavy truck with the cracking, running and profile, all at 100 kilometres an hour, and create this digital twin for the horizontal infrastructure. It hasn't been done before, it is now done. So what are the business cases? So we asked Transport for New South Wales. They said, well, in business cases, trees on the side of the road. We spend $25 million a year trimming trees, but we do it historically. You know, each year we go and trim those trees on that road. Well, why? What's the prism of effect? Is there any tree in the prism? Well, we can tell you. We can run the vehicle at 100 kilometres an hour every two or 3 months and tell you, do the clash detection, tell you where to trim, save you a fortune. 63% of all deaths on our road system come from rural and regional Australia. Run off road, hit a tree, die. We need to know where they are and we need to know when to chop them down or protect them. You cannot have people making an innocent mistake in a vehicle losing their lives. It's 2023. Got to stop the horror on our road system. And this is about identifying where those are and getting them fixed. The other thing we've done as part of that digital space is people get all concerned about their privacy. So the team have done some magnificent job working with some software developers to de-anonymise all the data sets. So as we're picking up, particularly in cities, people walking down the street, these programs automatically identify their faces and then change them. So they pick up their people, identify the face, and then change it. So the data that's processed is completely anonymised. Instantaneously, it gets processed in an anonymised fashion. We've got a big network in Australia, 900,000 kilometres of network, 400,000 kilometres that are unsealed. The unsealed network are the arteries that keep the freight task moving predominantly in this country. Understanding the performance of the unsealed network, when to intervene, when to maintain, and what's going to give you maximum bang for your buck, is really important. So we've got a fleet of these vehicles across the country. We also pick up skid resistance. Really important feature, particularly for road safety, particularly in rural and regional Australia. One of the latest additions is the eye-light, retro-reflectivity. Anybody who's got a car that was built 2022 and beyond has adaptive cruise control lane keep assist features. Lane keep assist features require you to understand, the car to understand and see the lines. So we've got a vehicle now that runs at 100 kilometres an hour, picks up centre line and edge line, and tells you what the reflectivity is. Queensland's a lead state. So Queensland said, well, that's a pretty cool thing. Let's do a network-wide survey. We spend a lot on retro-reflectivity and relining, and we do it on an historical basis. Again, that line's been down for 5 years, it's started reclaiming. Well, why? Has it deteriorated? Is it still fit for purpose? Well, they now know. In year one, we saved them $10 million. Right treatment, right time, right place. And next generation vehicles, next generation trucks require those data sets to operate more safely. It's much less fatiguing to drive a vehicle in an adaptive cruise lane keep assist mode than it is eyes on, hands on all the time. These are part of the changes. These are some of the tools for the next generation. So it's not about actually the tool. For us, it's the tool and the data set to drive different outcomes. Safer outcomes, smarter outcomes, data-driven outcomes that enable the freight tasks and the community tasks to be performed. Right treatment, right time, right place, to save taxpayers money in that process and to enhance the quality of the network. Every dollar we can save in a network that is being unnecessarily used, whether it be white lines, trimming trees, the simple stuff to be put back into the quality and the condition of the network, is a dollar well spent in that regard. So that's our task, that's our journey. There's lots of other things we do, but I haven't got time to talk through today. I just thought I'd give you a snapshot into some of the data world that we've moved into. As your agency, we represent you You own us, members of the community, you own governments. We work for you. Thank you for your time.